Hi there, and welcome to a new episode of Story of a Startup. I'm Kasim, your host, and I've got a really special guest with us today, Aimee from RinkyDink Candles. Basically, I have mentioned you on the previous podcast that I was going to bring in a guest, and that was somebody from the office previously next door to us. But before we start, do you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll kick off?
Okay. Hello. I'm Aimee. I am the founder and the owner of RinkyDink Candles. It's been going since 2020. Started in Newcastle, relocated to Leeds, and it's been going, for a couple of years now. And it's going.
It's going. Still going. That's always the positive side of it. So you said that you just came from Newcastle. So do you want to kind of just talk about how come you're in Leeds?
Yeah, totally. So, grew up in Newcastle, as you can probably tell from the accent, was born there, went to uni there, and I started my business there when I was working part-time, and it kind of hit a point where I knew I had to quit my job and take it full-time and move into a bigger space. And just by pure luck, at the same time, my boyfriend got offered a job with HMRC in Leeds, where he'd been on placement during uni, and it was a really good job offer. It would have been really silly to turn it down, so we kind of both were just like, yeah, the timing's right, let's just go.
And okay, so let's just cast so the audience will basically get to know you a little bit. What actually got you into candle making?
Okay, so weirdly, when I started my own business, at first I wanted to be an artist. Okay. So I was an artist. I painted and did abstract canvas paintings. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, cool, I've got that going down, but I'll try selling candles on the side. Yeah. But then the candles ended up becoming way more popular. But the reason I got into making them in the first place was because it just looked so therapeutic and relaxing, and it is. Yeah.
And so obviously just making candles, probably people can, even my wife was talking about making them the other day, and she was like, oh, I make candles. I was like, not on the same scale. So how do you make a transition from making candles at home, probably just for yourself or for a small audience, to kind of the scale that you're at now?
Yeah, so when I was first doing my product testing and everything and just initially playing, I had a hot plate and a stock pot. And the stock pot would get filled up with water, and then you'd boil it on the hot plate and just stick a bowl on the top, melt the wax in there, and just you could probably only do 2 candles at a time that way. And that's a really mini version of what I do now with a giant wax melter. But then the middle stage between the hot plate and the giant wax melter is a microwave. Loads of people don't know you can just melt wax in a jug in a microwave and just make them that way.
Yeah, I think that's how she did it. I think she was just saying that's what I do. I was like, no, let me show you this Instagram page, and this is what full production looks like. Okay, so just for people who obviously don't follow you over Instagram and even know anything about you, who's Aimee, basically?
Oh God. Right. Okay. Where do I start? So I was born. I grew up in Newcastle, and sadly, the upbringing I had wasn't great. Kind of experienced a lot of trauma really early on, before I even really knew it was trauma. Yeah. So sadly, when I got to kind of my late teens, I had generalized anxiety disorder, which I now know is the main symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder for me. It's something I have, and when I started working, when I was 16, 17, 18, I just really struggled with it. And doing day-to-day things, which seemed really normal, just seemed really difficult. So I kind of started my business at the same time as I started my mental health journey. And when I started doing therapy and figured out oh, this is why I can't work, and this is why everything seems so difficult, it's because my brain is really weird because of how early on everything happened. Only when I realized that did I realize, I can work and look after myself, and that's kind of been my journey. And to be honest, I'm still kind of in the middle of it. I don't know if you've seen, I post on my stories, I'm I've got a therapy session today, there's nothing wrong with saying it, and I'm really at the point now where I'm really open and honest about mental health, and quite a big reason I do what I do is because I just want people to know they can wipe their brow and know they're not on their own, and that we all have really adverse experiences.
Yeah. And obviously before doing your business, what other jobs did you do prior to this?
Well, I started working at Curry's when I was 16 till I was 20, and that was brutal. It was sales for 2 years, and then I was on the know-how desk for the other 2 years, which is where like people come and shout at you because their laptop is broken. So that was, I mean, to be fair, I learned a lot about selling through that job, because Curry's is one of those jobs where you have to go to customers and be like, hi, are you okay? Do you need any help? Which was not great, but at 16 it really helped my confidence. And then for a while I was a chocolatier apprentice for the Chocolate Smiths, who are like a big business now. But I was there with Steffi, the owner at the time, and we were really, really close, and I was on the ground of that when it was growing, which was really fun. So I got to see firsthand what a manufacturing business looked like as it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which later became so valuable for me, like as I was growing. So I've had a couple of retail jobs. I was an apprentice for a year. I did a year as part of my degree in a cybersecurity placement in a corporate office. That was really weird, and that was more or less the point where I was like, oh my god, I can't work. What's wrong with my brain? Why is everyone here like so fine with this and I'm not? So that was really cool. It was actually there that I figured out that I wanted to start working for myself when I was just doodling, and I wanted to sell my art. So I've had like quite a wide like range of jobs.
I mean, obviously, I think even myself, I think working in retail probably when I was like 16 helped build confidence, because it does. I mean, at the end of the day, you get people being nice to you, you get people shouting at you, all over that. Well, from the highs to the lows of spectrum, I guess. And I think my own learning from it is just not to take everything personal from it, because at the end of the day, they're not shouting at you. You're just there. They're shouting at the experience that they've had with the company or whatever it might be. So what about educational wise? How would you kind of say that you were with that?
So I've got a Bachelor's of Science in Computer and Digital Forensics.
Oh, wow.
And that's where I wanted to go. That's why I did cybersecurity. Initially I wanted to work in the police force, and the digital forensics stuff is basically where you take a laptop or a phone from a crime scene and analyze it for evidence. It's like that job. It's really cool. It's a really cool job, and I was definitely set to go into that. And when I had my part-time job, it was in IT. But my business just took off, and it really became a case of, do I want to do what's cool, or do I want to do what I'm really passionate about and what's going to be good for me in the long run? So that's the path I went. But my boyfriend Joe, the job he got was in cybersecurity management, because we met at uni doing the same degree. So I still get like the nerdiness and like all the fun PC stuff that I like from that part of our relationship, at least.
And so it is obviously I see it as two complete different ends of the spectrum there. You've got cybersecurity, which I've actually done some, because I used to be the head of digital learning. So I actually learned a lot about information security and data security and all the InfoSec stuff. And it's very, I'd say, close-knit, nerdy type of world. And they really love it. And that's basically what their world is. But how do you get from there to candles?
So I think, to be fair, when I was in that placement on the cybersecurity placement, that very quickly kind of changed my view of working in STEM, because there were so few women, and I was like, wow, like this, like there are women who work in STEM, but there aren't many of them, and I don't know if it might have just been a bit of a bad office, but the general kind of just vibe there, you know, when you just are around a big group of people and you can't really click. It felt like that, and it made me feel quite isolated. But while I was working there, I was doodling constantly on my notepad, and somebody literally just walked past and went, oh, you should sell those. And that became an Etsy shop on the side that then developed into cool, I want to do art and paintings and maybe candles. And that naturally progressed into the candles.
Yeah.
So it's weird because at no point I didn't ever really set out and go, I want to do a really cool, successful candle business. I just knew I wanted to work for myself, try a bunch of different mediums, and then when one hopefully took off, that would be the one that I would want to specialize.
And was it in a really corporate environment that you were in?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, obviously we'll talk about this later on, but when I see you over your social media platforms, I can't really picture you being in a corporate environment. But yeah, we'll touch upon that later, and people who obviously follow you will probably get what I mean by that, but people who are new to you, when you start following her, you'll know exactly what I mean, and we'll talk about that soon. Okay, so how did you make the first step then? What was you talked about then Etsy. So you want to work for yourself. You've decided that you want to kind of go this art candle route. What was the kind of stepping stones into this world?
Cool. So the first thing that I did was drop shipping.
Okay.
So I teamed up with a local printer and sent my designs over to them, set up an Etsy shop, and whenever a customer purchased, say, a t-shirt from me, I forwarded the order to the printing company. They printed it, they shipped it to the customer. So it was quite good from my side because I was only really doing like customer service, tracking the orders, and sort of it was great really because it was like watching the money come in. But then I very quickly realized that because obviously you're paying someone else to do a load of the work, the money that comes in like isn't really a lot. It was great for while I was at uni though, and definitely I would say being on Etsy gave me that first experience of, okay, this is technically e-commerce, this is an online shop, this is how I can expect busy peak periods to look like. And because I did it over Christmas and I was so shocked at how quickly the numbers went up at Christmas, even on a massive marketplace like Etsy. So that was kind of how I started, and I would definitely say it was a good way to start out. But I very quickly realized Etsy, unfortunately, and I know it's worse now because that was back in 2018, the fees that they take from the seller are ridiculous. And unfortunately, again, a lot of the customers on Etsy, a lot of them do realize it's handmade and a lot of care is taken with it, but a lot of them don't and expect it to be like Amazon and where is it? Why isn't it here the next day? And it's not really that kind of marketplace. So that made me know that I wanted to move towards my own website, which was originally RinkyDink Art, which is why outside it says RinkyDink Art. And then initially it was just a website I set up to sell art prints. And then on my Instagram, I was like, hi guys, candles are available now if you want those too. And it just naturally went on from there.
And then obviously you've kind of grown quite a lot over social media. Do you remember your first post?
Not really, because my art Instagram, my business Instagram, was originally for that Etsy shop back in 2018. So there's probably loads of posts that were done and then deleted. But I do remember the first thing I did where I saw real results from it on social media. I got my friend Steffi, who I worked with as an apprentice at the Chocolate Smiths. She had been running her small business for 7 years by that point because I left really early on to go to uni. And she bought one of my candles and she had about 30,000 followers on the page at the time. And she put it on a story and she was like, I've just bought this candle from RinkyDink Art. It's really, really good. And instantly about 200 followers came over. And honestly, and I'd say it to anyone else who wants to start, that's all you need. Like once those people bought the product and knew it was good, a lot of care went into it, they bought again. And a lot of those customers I still have now, all this time later.
Okay, so how did it make you feel getting them first kind of few sales?
It was amazing.
And then what was the kind of like... Because the reason why I asked this is because when I used to have an e-commerce business myself, it was Mr. Lapel. Basically, I used to sell like men's accessories, so ties, pocket squares, and so forth. And I remember because quite a lot of my audience was based in the US. I used to wake up in the middle of the night checking my phone to see if I had sales, and I got so excited because I did. And I just remember that feeling of like I'm actually doing it. Yeah, exactly. When did you kind of realize that this is actually a business opposed to just a hobby?
I think when I started having to make a lot of extra time for it, because I was working part-time and I was working 20 hours a week. So it used to be fun to work my hobby stuff in the mornings, but with no real structure, just play around a little bit, maybe pack 1 or 2 orders if they came in, and then go to work. But it was getting to the point where like more and more orders would be coming in, and I'd have to go in the morning, do my part-time job, then come back from my part-time job to catch up in the evening and make more stuff. And it was kind of then when I was really running out of time that I just thought this is becoming a thing now. It's got legs.
And then what's that kind of, because this is something that, I mean, everyone's at different stages of their life where they can kind of say, you know what, I'm going to quit my job, hand in my notice, and I'm going to go full force into this business. For me, I actually still work full time as well as doing all this agency. So you've seen next door, we've obviously got like quite a lot of people in there, because I can't financially just be like, oh, I'm just going to leave my job because I've got kids and a family. When did you kind of make that decision to say, and that feeling of handing in notice and then that's it, this is full time now? And how did it make you kind of feel at the time?
So scared. It was really, really scary. I didn't pay myself. And I think that's something you need to be real about. If you're going to run a small business, like, sure, pay for food and like cover your rent and stuff. I wouldn't say take the plunge if you can't cover your rent. But just expect to live frugally for a while. That helped ease the anxiety for me personally, because I'm not really a big spender anyway, so it wasn't too difficult to cut back. But I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew I was definitely ready for it, and I knew if it went wrong, thankfully I'm still at an age where and I've got a great degree as a backup that I'd be safe. So there's definitely a security blanket there. But I mean, even now, still, I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing this all by myself. I can't believe it. I think that feeling never really goes away because it's your thing. It's what you.
And then you talked about obviously mental health issues and anxiety, and I personally feel anxious when I think, oh my God, I've actually got, and that's probably what's making me not want to leave my job, because of that whole, oh my God, what will happen if things go wrong? I've got all these people to pay, rent, and then obviously all the rest of it. How does that kind of like from a mental health perspective, how do you kind of manage that pressure?
So I knew that the paying thing was a big deal for me as well. So I made sure before I quit my job, I made sure all of my debts were paid off, because I had like a credit card debt of about $1,000 and I think a loan of like $2,500. So I saved up and paid that off so that if for some reason I had no money, I could still pay my rent, my phone bill, and that's all I had to worry about. It's really weird though, anxiety wise. Of course, running your own business comes with its own stresses, but it's a different kind of anxiety that I have. I think because when you work for somebody else, you're constantly worried about disappointing them. And I know just personally for me, the kind of anxiety I have revolves a lot around how I'm affecting other people, how they perceive me, if I'm disappointing them, if I'm good enough for them. But when you run your own business, for me, because I just work for me, I don't have any staff, I don't have any colleagues, there's nobody there. I mean, it's a bit silly because I know I also do so many stupid things on my story for like 12,000 people. But on an anxiety level, it just feels like it's just me, and there's something really freeing, I think, about that.
Okay, so let's move on to your social media then, because I was telling you the story about how I actually came into contact with you for the first time. So this is actually your old office, which I've taken over now as kind of our like meeting room, podcast room. But I remember the one thing about this office is that we don't actually get to know who actually is in the building. Nobody really introduces each other unless you go up to them like, hi. And I remember seeing like a load of your bags outside, Royal Mail bags, and obviously because of my e-coms business, I was like, looks busy, because that's what I used to do. And then I kind of just like saw you walking, dragging them to the lift, and I was like, what do you do? You're like, I make candles. Naturally, out of curiosity, I quickly just looked at your Instagram to kind of say, okay, let's just see what you do. And then I saw somebody completely different to what I see walking around the corridors. From the corridors perspective, my perspective anyway, you seem really quiet and shy. And then I saw on stories, it was definitely not the case. So, where does this personality come from? And I'm guessing it's always been there. And how do you find the confidence to share it over social media?
So the confidence thing is just practice. Yeah. I've definitely gotten to a point now where a time thing, like 1 year ago today, will come up and I'm like, wow, I've got like no confidence on my stories. Yeah. But only through doing it every day did I start gaining more confidence. Yeah. I think it really helps that a lot of the community I've got on my page are also really weird. It's all about like the alternative subculture, like the goths, the emos and the nerds and all that, and it's just where my happy place is. So when there's just this person on their story saying and doing all these silly weird things, I think it helps people to be like, oh, like that's what I'm like as well. And it's nice for me. I get a lot of reactions from people saying this is really funny, this really cheered my day. And for me, knowing that me just being me on my stories, like if that makes someone laugh or it makes someone's day better, or, you know, I've had friends say, oh, I save up your stories until I'm on my dinner break and then I watch them all when I'm having my dinner. It just makes me really happy knowing I can be that presence for people. And the personality itself, weirdly, I think it's a lot of it's there's this concept of post-traumatic growth. So it's when you finally start realizing what your issues are, which I did a couple of years back now, and I've been working on them. If you've got post-traumatic stress, you can use it for post-traumatic growth. And I really feel like because of the kind of trauma I had, I was very insecure and I didn't really have a personality because I just felt like I had to blend into whoever was around me so they would like me. So this person on the Instagram stories is like the most authentic version of myself that I think I've ever been, which is
and then because I've been like researching a lot about personal brand, I guess, and it's something that I'm trying to work on myself, because ultimately people buy off people, and obviously from a servicing business myself, I need to be out there as much as possible. I'm actually really an introvert. I was at an event the other day, and I'm one person, I hate small talk and I hate going up to people, and I actually understand from that perspective. Even on the podcast, I might seem like I'm a bit more confident and I can speak in front of people, but in reality, when it comes to being with other people, it's not really something that I'm comfortable doing. And I kind of just see that the way that you are of your socials, and I just think that's probably a little bit of everybody, to be honest. I think a lot of people just want to act like that and just a bit nervous to do it, or kind of just think about, oh, how I'm going to be seen, or I don't want to show my true self because it might not,
because it's weird,
or it might not show X, Y, and Z of me or whatever. I did make me laugh the other day because I actually saw one of you doing it outside, and I was like, if I did that while somebody was outside in the car park and somebody saw me doing it, I'd be so embarrassed. But do you get that kind of like, or just kind of over it now, like it is you? And
the stuff that I do in my studio, fine. The car park stuff, I usually come at like 7 a.m. when there's no one here, and I'm like, right, maybe one person's gonna see, but what's that one person gonna do? At least not everyone's here. It definitely gets easier over time, and the weirdness naturally is just like seeped out more and more and more as time's gone on.
So obviously that's the kind of obviously your craziness over socials. In respect of the next steps, so obviously you said that you started off in Newcastle, you came to Leeds, you obviously got this office, and now you've grown significantly and you've got the office upstairs. What's the kind of goals for you now? Like where do you want to go with this?
So I think long term, what I'd love to have is a really cool shop in Leeds, kind of like just like a really cool clubhouse for weird people. So, you know, maybe you can come in and peruse the scent selection, but you might also want to get a coffee and sit down. And I'd really love to be able to make it a creative space and collaborate with other local artists who could sell their stuff there as well. And I really like that idea. But I also really, the big goal is to become a leading UK candle subscription service. And I'm at the point now, which is really scary to think, that I'm actually beginning to look at investment and seeing if it's possible to make that a reality. Yeah. Because I know I can't do it on my own.
You talked then about potentially getting investment. Is this something that you've looked into before? Because I know a lot of people, when they kind of go into I'm looking for investment or anything such as that kind of growth stage, people don't really know what to do. So have you started looking into that, or is that something that you're completely just learning as you go?
I'm trying, but it does feel like a bit of a minefield. Yeah. It's suddenly, you feel like you're in this world where there's loads of big business words being thrown around, like capital, and you're just like, I think I'm going to need to seek some sort of advisement for it, because I'm not really sure. Yeah. So
obviously you said that you want to be the top of candle making within the UK. Big aspirations. What makes you kind of, I suppose it's a kind of question, but what makes you unique that thinks you're going to be the one who kind of gets to that stage?
So I found out quite early on that the world's leading candle brand, Yankee Candles, uses paraffin wax in their candles, which is derived from crude oil, which is fossil fuels. And I think it's just because it's available en masse for a cheap price. And back in the day, people thought it was the best kind of wax to fill up a whole room with smell. But obviously times have changed, and we're always being reminded about the planet and how much it's suffering. So soy wax is totally naturally derived, and the fragrance oils that I use are vegan and cruelty free as well. So I just think in a more ethically conscious world, and eco-conscious when it comes to that stuff, it's nice to have products that are authentically different, and all the packaging is 100% recyclable, so there's not really any waste. So it definitely feels like there's a market there for something that's different. But also just the fact that it's an alternative brand. I would say it appeals to those kids who were probably bullied in school for being a bit different, and there's something quite comforting about that.
Yeah. And so obviously there's going to be a point where you need to start hiring and going through all that stage. Have you thought about that yet? Have you kind of got to that point where you're like, I need some help?
Yeah, at Christmas, it definitely hit me that I was like, right, next Christmas, I'm not doing this by myself, not again, because my poor boyfriend can only be drafted in so many times before he's like, Aimee, I'm getting a bit sick of this. Like, you need to hire somebody. So I've thought about it. I've got a couple of friends who have come forward and said they'd be quite happy to come on board part-time, which is really good. Helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so we've obviously talked about like the stages of you getting into this. One thing that I like to talk about is, because we talked about this earlier, is the reality of actually owning a business and the hardships behind it. What would you say that the hardest part of having your own business is?
All of the times that you fail at something. That's the hardest bit, because I feel like we're always told failure is bad. So the second and running your own business is so much trial and error, and there's usually more error than anything else.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And what's kind of been not failure points, I'd say development points. What would you kind of say that they've been so far?
So for me, product testing was it was such an effort, because candles, especially soy wax candles, are just so temperamental. Like, they're really tricky to get right. So it took me about 4 or 5 months of just constantly making things and them going wrong, and making them and them going wrong again, and that was soul destroying. But when it's so worth it at the end, when you finally get that product that you're like, oh good, it's the quality and the standard that I've always wanted it to be. It's so worth it. But I don't think people prepare you for how many times you have to fail to realize what kind of thing you want from your business.
And have there been any kind of like points you just thought, this isn't working, I need to kind of look at other jobs and kind of go back into the full-time world? Or
thankfully, no. I will say though, it definitely does lessen the anxiety having a fallback plan. You don't ever want to think about your business going under and it completely failing. But I also think, especially in the wake of the pandemic, it's probably healthy to have a disaster plan in place in case something just happens and suddenly you can't do the thing that you do. So I'm quite fortunate in my position, because I've got my degree and it's in a good field where they want more women. So I'm quite lucky there. But yeah, I would say have a disaster plan ready, but don't focus on it. Just be happy that it's there if you need it.
Okay. So you currently at the moment got about 12,000 followers over Instagram. How have you managed to get that? Because a lot of businesses out there who have been going for ages and haven't got to that level of following. Obviously, it's not like the hundreds of thousands as yet, but obviously it's still quite a lot. How have you got that?
Do you know, I don't really know. I would definitely say, like, I have one product, the Aimee Bands candle, that when I pay Instagram to push it and advertise it, generally it attracts quite a lot of followers. But at the same time, I also know those people are only following to know when it's back in stock, and then they might buy it and then no longer engage. So thankfully, quite a lot of the followers I've had have been honest and said, I found you through that advert. But then as soon as I started watching your stories, I just stuck around, and now I'm a regular customer. So I definitely think the content that you put out there makes a lot of difference to gaining followers, but also keeping them active and engaged.
So is that how you kind of like done your growth plan so far? Is just a lot of Instagram posting and kind of getting out there to the market? Okay. And so in respect of, we talked about next steps and you wanted to kind of go out to investments, but what are the kind of like smaller goals in between that point? Like what's next? Is there a new collection coming out? Are you kind of like working on new products out there, or what's the kind of steps that you're at now?
So smaller goals, I've got a new range coming out on April the 9th. That's quite fun because it's the throwback range. So it's loads of candle scents that I've done in the past, and they've gone with the season, and people have gone, I really want it to come back. So, and because I've attracted so many new followers recently, a lot of them didn't actually get to experience those fragrances the first time, because some of them I only had like 200 followers when they dropped. So that's fun. I'm also looking at starting, it's weird how it's come full circle. I'm actually looking at starting to sell clothing and beanies and merchandise and stuff through the website, because there's been a request for that, which is really cool, because I actually know what I'm doing there, thankfully. I would say that's probably it. And it is a goal to have at least one member of staff before the end of the year.
Yeah. Cool. So in respect of like, obviously you've kind of gone through this full journey now, and you obviously talked about your own self-development and obviously getting to a point where you feel more comfortable in yourself. What would your kind of message be to anybody who has kind of got a similar story to you? So obviously is really maybe struggling with mental health and maybe wants to start their own business. What would you kind of tell them?
Don't get carried away with thinking, where is this going? What's it going to be? Yeah. Just do it. Just have a play and just do it, and start really small, because if you immediately start thinking, where's it going? What does it all mean? What's it about? You're not going to go any further.
Yeah. Okay. And let's go back and talk about the comment that happened yesterday. So you said there was your first time hater. Yeah. And what was that comment and how did it make you feel?
So I dropped a reel and it had a song in the background by Adam Sandler from The Wedding Singer. And it's a comedy song. The lyrics are comedy lyrics, but if you don't get the context, you're probably going to take some offense to it. So this follower did just that, hadn't seen the film, didn't get the context, took offense, left a comment saying I was disgusting and that I should be ashamed of myself, and that they thought I was an inspiration, and that I was blocked. So my reaction initially was, oh no, like this is, I didn't get upset, but I definitely looked at the reel and was like, is this going to harm my brand? Should I take it down? But it had already been up for a couple of weeks. So I was thinking probably not. So I just happened to check because I thought, well, if I'm blocked, I shouldn't be able to see that comment. So I just went on their page and blocked them. And it kind of, for me, it was just the whole point of my page is all about positivity, and not toxic positivity, but just being silly and having fun and not really being hateful. And I didn't want someone in my space who was going to be like that. So it just seemed like the right reaction to just cut them out.
And how did it make you feel?
Do you know what? At first, I was upset and I was a bit disappointed, but after kind of blocking them out of the space, I was kind of like, I've just had my first hater. Like, my account must be growing to a size where it isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
And that means it is weirdly a positive sign.
Yeah. And say, for example, like you do grow, you are naturally going to probably get a few more of these comments. I think we're small and we get, like, I remember like some of my other businesses, I used to get quite a few comments here and there. People weren't happy with it, which is part of the game. Like, obviously it does affect you probably for the first one or two because you take it personally. But then, like you said before, it's like, how do you manage it? Do you feel like you could have managed it in a different way? Do you feel like you should have gone back to that person and maybe have a conversation to see how they've like reacted? Or do you think that the way that you dealt with it is probably the best way for you?
I feel like if they'd maybe DM'd me with what they'd said, a conversation would have been fine and on the cards. But like, if you're going to leave a comment like that on a public forum where everyone can see it, you're not really inviting anyone in to want to. Personally, for me, it's not the sort of thing I would want to engage with. So I don't think I would have handled it any differently. 100% no, in the future, because presumably it will happen more and more as the account grows. I know I can't block everybody, but Instagram has a really good feature where you can block out certain words and filter them out of comments altogether. So I suppose if you wanted to, you could do comment filtering, or you can just ignore it and just let it exist there and hope that your followers come to your rescue.
I mean, the thing is you can't satisfy everybody. End of the day, somebody might find it funny, somebody might think it's a joke, and then obviously some people, like that person, obviously took it to heart. So what is next? So if you were to kind of say in kind of like summary, as we're kind of getting to the end of the podcast, what would you kind of say that your vision is for RinkyDink Art? So what's, I know obviously we talked about you'd like a shop and then obviously go out to investment, but if you were to kind of look back in 5 years time and kind of go, this is where I want to be, this is I've made it, because a lot of people kind of have this ultimate goal of this is success for them. This is, I've made it now. What is that? Like, what is that one thing?
Probably just to be a leading candle brand in the alternative market that offers subscription-based services and is mainly focused on self-care, I would say, and mental health.
Cool. Well, to the people that don't follow you and don't know who you are and want to know more about you, what's your Instagram?
At RinkyDink Artist.
And is there anything else that you want to say to anybody right now?
The throwback range launches on April the 9th, and you can go to rinkydinkcandles.co.uk for that. And I've made a lot of stuff, so if you're interested, I would definitely check it out. Please.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you're nothing but success.